Okay. Well, cool. Hey, Jamison, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. So talk to me a little bit about how you got introduced to Legends, because I actually don't think I know this story.
Yeah. So total accident, actually. So my wife just got online and signed up for a free trial, and then decided she didn't want to go, and I felt bad because she'd already confirmed that she was going. So then I just showed up in her place.
That's
just
awesome.
So that yeah. Because I have this thing inside me that's like, dude, somebody's like waiting for you. You can't just ghost them, right? So I showed up for it and really loved it. And I signed up right there. And yeah, that was like 3.5 years ago.
That's awesome. Was that at Saratoga? Was it Jillian who was the gym manager? Then I'm sure.
Yes, actually. Yeah, it was Jillian.
Okay.
Saratoga.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been pretty close to when they opened then too.
I believe it was, yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty new.
So out of your time at Saratoga, how would you say like your experience progressed through Legends? Like,
Yeah.
if you took a snapshot of Jamison in the first month, what would that look like compared to month 6 or month 3?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple different progression paths that I've seen with people where like some people come in and they're just hardcore and they're never miss a class from the day they sign up.
Yeah, there are
Right?
definitely
And
those
I
people.
was not one of those guys at all. So like I started coming and I was super gung ho for the first couple weeks, and then 5:30 just felt so early, and I just like stopped coming for a long time. So I think progression of Jamison from like first month to 6th month was pretty similar actually, because I just didn't really, I wasn't very consistent. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
I mean, you were trying to go to the 5:30s.
Yeah, I was just kind of, that's when it worked for my schedule. So I was just trying to be early bird.
Those 5:30s are tough, man. I think, it takes a lot to get out of, I don't know, to be up and ready, I think, even that early in the morning to like, want to work out and kind of be ready to go. I feel like it takes, I prefer working out in the afternoon. So I'm more of an afternoon kind of guy. So
Yeah. The thing I liked about it though is the dudes and and the ladies too, like Andrea, I forget her last name, but she was always there at 5:30, and but yeah, just all the 5:30 people were like so hardcore and so dedicated, and I felt like I almost wanted to be in the cool kids club a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Just because they were so, like you could tell that these were the people that were always there.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that social pressure, and then like a little bit also of just like seeing what it would look like if I became a good amateur boxer and like how much fun it could be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a little different.
So what's it like when you first started boxing, do you remember the feeling? Because I remember when I started boxing, like I remember the feeling of being in a class surrounded by people who I felt like knew what they were doing. And I remember feeling like it was cool to be surrounded by those people. Would you say like that's kind of how 5:30 felt then?
Yeah, absolutely. So and they're yes, and I could shout out a lot of the people. Well, for instance, this guy probably doesn't even know who I am, but Kevin, who fought in the last executive fight night in May,
Oh, really?
was like the dude that I was always watching him from the other side of the gym. I was like, dude, if I could be as good as Kevin someday, I would be stoked about that. And so, yes, exactly what you described, where you see people who are doing it really well, and that's motivating to you to keep going, for sure.
That's awesome. So were these people like, through kind of the ups and downs for like the first 6 months, were these the kind of people that you would see like every time you came in and they were like staple people?
Yeah, like literally every time I was in the gym,
That's
I
awesome.
could count on Kevin or Andrea or Cody or like those guys being there.
Just in the morning. That's
Yeah.
super cool. So after 6 months, because you're super involved with the gym now, like you're a coach here and I think you're doing an amazing job as a coach. Like, it's one of those things where I've picked a lot of coaches to be member coaches in gyms, and it's always the same kind of things that you can tell with coaches. And I remember talking to you about it, and one of the first things you said was you were just like, I just really want to teach people. And like, whenever I hear that, when there's a member coach that I'm thinking about training, it's like, they're going to be awesome. But where do you think kind of the transition started from, being a little bit less involved around the 6-month mark to now like 3.5 years later where you're super involved?
So I actually feel like for me, my job moved to Lehi from Orem. And so I switched here to the Lehi gym. And I think that's when I really started being consistent. And that's been about 2.5 years now. But yeah, I started coming in again, early 5:30 classes here. And Coach Brigg would give me a hard time if I'd miss. And then, Coach Andrew's giving me feedback, and I'm like so winded I can't even apply what he's suggesting. I'm like, dude, I got to come to 5 classes a week so I can listen to what Coach Andrew says so I don't look like an idiot. And a lot of it was, again, that social pressure. And then I think one thing that Lehi does really well is they build that community and that tribe that kind of like sucks people in if they're wanting to get sucked in.
That's awesome.
Can happen.
So do you remember, like, was Brigg your first coach here at Lehi then?
I don't actually remember who was the coach the very first time I came, but he was one of the first coaches I had. Yeah.
One of the ones that stood out?
Yeah.
That's great. So it's kind of, it sounds to me like a mix of coaches giving you feedback and trying to help you improve, and then also just kind of like the positive atmosphere that came with 530 is what kind of made you more committed to getting better at boxing. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think there's also like an aspect where I started to notice some of you get like this positive feedback loop, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm actually doing better. And then you want to do better more, and you want to do better faster, right? And so if you can just hang on until you start to get that positive feedback loop happening, then you kind of get hooked.
That's funny. Almost like a flywheel. That's super cool.
For sure.
So, and I know you're sparring now. Did you ever spar at Saratoga, or when did that kind of thought first? Because most people don't spar, So when did that thought kind of like enter your mind?
Yeah, so I started, I actually hate New Year's resolutions. It's like my least favorite thing. But it was a New Year's resolution for me to fight in 2025. I knew that I probably wasn't going to be ready for May. I really, really hoped for October that I'd be ready. And so January, I was like, okay, if I want to start, if I want to fight in October, I need to start sparring like January 1st. So that's when I got into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so just started sparring early in the year, and
yeah. Well, I think sometimes, like, it's always hard too, because I know you talked to me about it really after you first started sparring, where you were like, hey, like, I want to fight, and you've been really consistent with sparring too. I feel like you'll make promises to yourself, and then sometimes you'll come up to me, or I'm sure you do it with other coaches too, and then they're like your accountability buddies too. So then, it'll be like, oh, I'm here every Thursday, or I'm here, and I think it's kind of cool to see that progression happen. And I think it's hard, sometimes matchups don't go quite the way that we hoped, and sometimes there aren't necessarily all of the right options on the table, especially for a first fight. So how would you say, you kind of handled the experience through kind of the selection process for the October fight? What was kind of going through your head, and where are you at now?
Yeah, so I, in my mind, like I told everybody I know, I'm fighting in October. And so it's like all my coworkers, all my family, everybody. And I don't think they even understood that, like, oh, there's like a selection process. Like, it's not decided yet.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just kind of told everybody. So I was pretty disappointed when I didn't match. That made me very sad. But it was, I talked to you about it, and I talked to Coach Andrew and Coach Brigg about it as well. And it was just kind of a reframing, like, hey, for my first fight, I want to be in better condition than I was, and, peak performance. And so I quickly was able to kind of like identify, okay, if that's where I want to be, in what ways am I not there yet? And so then just kind of laying out, like, okay, these are the things that I want to be better at, and the ways that I want to improve so I can prepare. So it was, kind of like a shifting of the goalposts, but then also like installing some new checkpoints along the way, if that makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I remember, you've been so excited about like the idea of fighting in October. And I think that's one of the things, I kind of will go on and on about in Lehi for our sparring program in particular, is that, like, we really strive to make warriors, not champions. And I'm sure you've heard me say this kind of thing before, and I think that part of that is really the infinite mindset. Like, I want people to come in and try and get better over a really long-term basis, because I know that if somebody's consistently good, that, greatness is just down the road. It's going to take time to get there, but it's one of those things that I can reliably count on, And I think that, Yeah. Like hearing you talk about setting up these almost like little mini checkpoints before you get a fight, which I'm sure you will. You know, I think that that's kind of an inspiring way to think about it, where it's that nice mindset shift from, you know, just one finite goal to setting up these little goals along the way, and then kind of having these bigger goals that are kind of like larger checkpoints as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's really helpful for me. And I think like also going back to like, how did I get hooked on boxing to the point that I'm like actually wanting to come very frequently? A lot of it's that same thing where it wasn't like, hey, I've got this goal where I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be a good boxer by the end of the year or whatever. It's like, hey, I want to improve at this thing. Like I want my footwork to get better is like what I'm really currently thinking about, right? Every week we talk about it.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, I just really want, you know, I want my hooks to, and like there was always like something that I was working on. So it was like, I can feel the endorphins of like succeeding at that goal, right? So even 2 years ago when like my punches 1 through 8 all pretty much sucked, I could be like, hey, for the next month, I'm going to work on my 3, make sure my 3's looking good, right? So it's like just like setting those smaller checkpoints that you can win at along the way, so that it's not about the destination as much as it is like the checkpoints along the way there.
That's also
the journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say you're like naturally wired that way, or because it sounds like you have a really major internal sense of kind of setting these checkpoints and these goals. So what's kind of your mindset? Does that kind of cross over in other areas of life, or kind of how does that sit in your brain? How does that work for you?
That's actually an interesting question. I think I have a tendency to get overwhelmed if I look at a big picture, right? And I tend towards perfectionism. I tend towards like, you know, just all those little things. And so it's really hard for me to look at like a huge goal. And so I just want to break it down into smaller pieces. And I think I do that in more things than just boxing, but it lends itself well to boxing as well.
That's awesome. And then talk to me. I know you're a programmer. What kind of stuff are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm I mostly write JavaScript. So I'm a software engineer, and I just work on marketing software for restaurants. It's probably the least interesting thing about me, if we're being honest. But yeah, so I'm a software engineer, and it is interesting how like a lot of those things do apply actually to boxing. It's like a really like cognitive activity when you're training.
Yeah, well, I think like because I've gotten the opportunity to reflect on that in my own coaching too, in the way that I'll kind of like break things down with, you know, concepts kind of like abstraction and programming, which is just the idea of taking what you were talking about, like taking a big problem and kind of combining little pieces of function that sit within that, and then, you know, overall you get this nice grand picture. But when you're kind of looking at individual things, you know, you have to solve this problem, and, you know, and then you can kind of abstract up a layer and see the results. And that's just, yeah, it was like, even as a coach, that has impacted the way that I think about problem solving. So yeah, I was like, I'm curious if that's an everything thing, or if that's mostly boxing, or kind of where that sits.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that your style of coaching, I think, resonates with me. And you can pack so much meaning into so few words if you start with like really little things, right? So like I'll be in the ring doing an open round, and you'll just say like, cut off the ring. And I'll know, you know, there's like this huge, like, you know, that means all these things. I'm like, oh yeah. And then I just do that thing, right? So you can, it's almost like you're just invoking a function call. And then like Jamison's body goes and executes that because you've taught me like what this 3-word snippet means. I go execute this, right? You know what I mean? And it's been kind of fun, just like all these little modules that you consistently, you and all the coaches here will just consistently do these little things, and then you can execute on those consistently, which is kind of cool.
See the way those things add up.
Yeah.
So in your time in sparring then, and I can relate to that too. I remember like prepping for my first fight, and it very quickly became like Kylan telling me to like stay bladed. And I knew that that meant like left shoulder up, right shoulder down, rear heel up. My right hand is tucked in, right? And it's kind of crazy how you can sum so much up in so few words. I want to touch a little bit more on your experience with sparring. So how do you feel, like if you had to describe your feelings after your first night of sparring? Because I think that this is really intimidating for a lot of people. And I think this is one of the reasons why people maybe steer away from boxing gyms in general, is that they're so worried about this side of things. And, you know, sparring's definitely not for everyone. Like there are people who just shouldn't spar, and I'll stick with them on the heavy bag. We'll do plenty of work there. And, you know, they'll learn to the best of their ability. And like, that's awesome. And a lot of people, that's exactly what they're looking for, you know? And I think for you, like, that's not the case. And sparring is hard, like inherently. So talk to me about kind of the emotions after your first session in the ring.
Oof. It's funny because I thought I was pretty good before my first time sparring, right? So I came in, I'm like, dude, I'm going to like, right? I'm going to throw hands and just be the best. And it was crazy the degree to which I just got beat up, right? And so I was actually shocked at how much better than me a lot of the people that I sparred with were. So very surprising to me. And so then I kind of had like a couple experiences from that realization. I was like, dude, maybe I'm actually not good at boxing. Like, why am I spending so much time doing this thing that I'm not actually that good at? And then, and it's like, oh, but maybe I could be, right? And so it was, I think there was like a brief moment of like, as I'm driving home, like, dude, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Which I think is normal, right?
That's totally normal. Yeah, that's totally normal.
So it's like, yeah, I think maybe this isn't for me. But then I was like, but wait a second, why not? The only reason they're better is because they've done it more and they've thought about it harder and they've pushed past the discomfort. And then I got like the next level of hooked, where it changed the way that I would work out on the bag, because I'd be thinking like, okay, so I'm not just like trying to build stamina on the bag. Now I'm trying to think, how can I make sure I don't go home with a busted up lip again? Or, you know, funny story. I went home and like my lip was just on the inside, just shredded. I went home and showed my daughter, and she freaked out. And she's 7, and my 7-year-old daughter was just freaked out. Like, so, and still to this day, she tells me I'm not allowed to spar if I ever come home with like, you know, scrapes or
anything like that.
So, but it's she's fine. But and I'm fine too. And that's the thing, is like, you're gonna be fine. It's just like pushing past that. But it's another thing that becomes addictive once you get started on it.
Yeah, well, I think it's really cool. Like you said, you know, you came from this experience, and everyone starts out bad when they start sparring. Like the number of times that I've heard people kind of go through that cycle where they're like, and it's the same for boxing. Like if you're just in, you know, your first boxing class, you're like, everyone starts out with 2 left feet. They don't have a guard. Like they don't know how to throw punches, you know, and then they start developing and you see them kind of improve. But, you know, just now when you were talking, like the whole thing, you know, the whole mindset shift where you're like, wait a minute, why not? I think is kind of an interesting idea. And I don't know. I feel like that is probably a muscle. Like the wait a minute, why not muscle in your brain is kind of the way that I'm thinking about it, you know, where it's like, how many times do people just kind of go with the flow and keep doing the same old habits? They don't try something new. They don't want to expect something else out of what they've already done in the past. And, you know, I don't know. What do you think is the key piece to get people to kind of break those structures and sort of see themselves in the shoes of somebody who is like them but so much better than them down the road, right? Because there are kind of 2 paths that you were looking at after your first time sparring. It was like, you know, I stopped sparring and I'm where I'm at, but wait a second, why couldn't I be better? Yeah. Like, what do you think is the key thing that kind of flips that switch in people's brains?
Yeah, I think like I can't speak for other people on that, but I think for me, it's like going back to what we were talking about, breaking down like a big thing into just like little things, and then getting the endorphin hit from like that little win, right? So instead of being like, dude, someday I will be as good as fill in the blank of the guy that beat me up, right? Like,
Yeah.
just someday I'll be that, and then like swap that out and be like, you know what? Maybe next time I'll land a 4 the way that he landed a 4 on me, right? I still remember it was Coach Terry actually. That dude, that 4 just, I think my ribs are still not to scare anyone away, but like the first time I took a good body shot was unforgettable, right? So, but instead of being like, hey, I'm just going to be the best next time I come, it's like, hey, maybe next time I come, I'll just try to land 1-4, right? I'll just do that. And it's like just breaking it down. And then like I did that and it felt really good actually. And then, and that made me want to come back again. And then like, hey, maybe this time I'm going to work on slipping that punch instead of taking it straight to the face, right? And so
Yeah.
and like I feel like my slips are, 7 out of 10,
Totally, man.
6 out of 10. No,
Yeah, they're getting way better.
they're getting way better. But it's like, but every time it just feels a little bit better. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if it's like, hey, how do you choose the, but why not versus like, man, not for me. I think it's like, why not just do that little thing instead of why not just tomorrow become the big thing? It's like breaking it down, right?
So it kind of goes back to that same idea of breaking things down into like the smallest problem that you can approach today.
Yeah. I think so. Like the smallest problem that you can solve, and then you just feel good when you solve it, right? So
That's
it's like
awesome.
the smallest win that you can have in the ring.
That's killer.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love
So
it.
you've been coming for long enough now. How long do you think it took you to like regain some of that confidence in the ring? Because I've gotten to see, like, from the coach's perspective, I've gotten to see you improve. And I'm curious, like, what your mindset looks like now when you're in sparring, on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
I don't know. It's I think it's so gradual that it's hard to say. I think I have a tendency to not think about it if I lack confidence. And so it's hard for me to say like, oh, I lacked confidence, because like, oh, I lack confidence. I just won't think about it. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But yeah, I think the change was so gradual that it's hard for me to say like, this is the day that all of a sudden I felt good. Right.
Yeah.
I will say though, like last night I had a ton of fun sparring. It was like a really fun night for me sparring. And yeah, like last night was very enjoyable. And I think that's one of those moments where I was like, maybe I am. Like maybe like somebody who just came in and got punched in the face real bad could look at Jamison and be like, hey, someday I could be like Jamison. And that felt good as I was driving home.
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool. Like, I remember, because you were sparring, we had a smaller group, and you were sparring with Braden last night. He's newer, still trying to figure out his guard and kind of the place that sort of sits, and really trying to figure out how to apply the things that we say in like our regular classes in the ring. Because I feel like you hear it, and you're hitting the heavy bag, and you're like, oh, I know what that means, and then you start applying that on mitts or in a skills class or in sparring, and then you're like, okay, I have to relearn how to kind of do that. And I kind of heard like you were actually coaching him pretty consistently through the class, like just with like little things to try and, help him improve. So for you, as like a coach now, how much of your time is spent thinking about areas where you're improving, and how much of your time is spent thinking about areas where other people are improving? Because I think, like, for me, most of my passion comes from seeing other people get better at the thing. Like, I love seeing that, and I like being the person who can like tinker with those dials and help people out. But I'm curious where you kind of sit there.
I think I'm probably way closer to the average new member on the bag than I am to you. And so for me, it's kind of the same thing. Like thinking about how I can improve is kind of the same thing as thinking about how they can improve. And so a lot of times when I'm coaching my classes, I'm thinking like, okay, this is a thing that I'm working on for sparring. And if I'm working on it, they can probably work on it too. And nothing that I'm working on is like so crazy or advanced that it's like, I don't know if I want to teach a new member. It's like pretty much everything I'm working on is just the basics. And so it's fun for me. And this is kind of like the progression of how stuff works. Like I'll be in sparring and I'll try something and I'll suck at it. I'm like, freak, dude, I got to work on that now. So then I'll come to the bags and I'll work on it. And then I work out at 4, and then I coach at 5. And then at 5 o'clock, I'm like, cool, this is the thing that I just barely worked on myself on the bags. Let's work on it with you guys now, right? And so then I work on it with them, and then I watch the ways that they mess it up or the ways that they nail it. And then I'm like, oh, am I messing it up that same way? I probably am. So it's kind of selfish where like me and my coaching is almost like a lab where I can run the experiment that I want to run on 15 people and see what works and what doesn't, right?
That's funny. I've never thought about it that way.
It's kind of fun.
That's super cool.
Yeah. But I think again, it is because like I'm really not like, you know what I mean? Like I'm probably closer to that entry level than like a super coach would be. And so I'm kind of on that same level with them in a lot of ways.
Coaching is so funny. I feel like I've gone so back and forth with with my own coaching, because I think like, you know, I kind of feel like the beginner coaches and the really advanced coaches almost always agree. And it's kind of like the people right in the middle, or like when you're right in the middle of your journey as a coach, where you start to get into like the really complex stuff. And then you reach a point where you kind of pass over this hump and you're like, oh yeah, having like a good guard and fast 1s and 2s is, you know, the best thing you can have, right? And that's almost the same answer you'd get as like a beginner coach, which I think it's one of the most interesting full circle things, at least for me, where I'm like, okay, you know, let me teach you this specialized jab that you'll use one time. Yeah. Or it's like, let me teach you an amazing cut jab that you're going to use every time you hit the bag or every time you're in the ring.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting cycle, at least from my perspective, coaching, where I feel like it's, you know, things get simpler the better you get, where it's, I don't know, it's no longer about the like kind of the fancy stuff, if you know what I'm saying.
No, I do. And it reminds me, like at the end of sparring, when we're all sitting around talking about the things we did well, the things we need to improve, and then like, okay, how do you improve it? It's like the running joke that the answer is always just shadow box, right?
Yeah.
It's like the answer is just shadow box. And like, that seems like such a, just like such a dumb basic answer. But I think it's like, as you go through that curve where it's like, maybe the answer is, well, I'm going to watch all these YouTube videos and learn like these advanced techniques. And it's like, or you get over that hump and you're like, yeah, just shadow box, bro. You got it.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because shadow boxing, that's such a funny joke too. And it's so perfect for what most people are working on, you know, where it's like, okay, how are you going to work on your guard? I'm going to shadow box, right? And, you know, most of the time, it's just a good, solid answer. Yeah, I don't know. So outside the ring, I'm curious, how do you feel like you've changed along with the program? So like if you were to take another snapshot of Jamison, I almost feel like there are two personalities, right? Like there's in the gym Jamison, there's boxer Jamison, and then there's like outside of the gym Jamison.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about like what you were like 3.5 years ago.
So I think in general, I tend to be like a very chill person and like just really laid back and like pretty calm person in general. And that's easy to do when you're confident in yourself, right? And I feel like I have become more confident in myself, which has allowed me to be even more chill in every way, which is kind of weird, but it's like, it touches on so many things. Like I just came running from work and we had some kind of like stressful stuff because like things are always burning down, right? And but it's funny because it's like, dude, last night I just got punched in the face like 5 times and it was fine though, right? And so it's like you can handle these kind of like stressful environments with a lot more confidence, and you can be a lot more chill and just like cool, calm, and collected, walking through whatever fire you're walking through. I have become more confident from learning a new skill and like feeling like I'm actually doing well and progressing at it. And that confidence spreads across a lot more than just my time in the ring. And so that applies at home, it applies at work, it applies in a lot of places.
That's awesome. So you feel like that level of, I'm going to call it a badass because that's what you are, but you know, being a badass here has helped you in other areas of your life?
Yes, I would say that.
That's awesome. As specifically in stressful situations. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I remember prepping for my fight, and I had some like my family was going through some pretty. A family member of mine was going through some pretty serious, like, health things at the time that I was quite concerned about. I remember going to sparring, and this is back when Kylan was the head coach for this gym, and I was coming in to spar, and I just remember being so happy to be here for that hour, because it was an hour where there was like a sense of relief from kind of the stresses in different areas of life, and an hour where it's like, you don't have time to focus on anything else, because if you try and focus on anything else right now, you're going to get hit in the face and it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And I feel like, to some extent, it's kind of nice. Like, we create a really cool environment here where I feel like you walk through the front door and not necessarily that the problems go away, but there's just kind of a nice barrier of separation. I feel like you walk in and you're like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the bag. I'm going to do my workout. Then I'm able to go and kind of face life and see some of those other kind of big challenges.
Well, I love like what you're describing too, is like this idea of flow state, right? And it's really cool that combat sports force you into a state of flow state, because there's no time to like be distracted by this or that or the other. And like a lot of times just when you're walking around doing normal life, it's so easy to be distracted by whatever's going on in the back of your mind, or, electronics that are always following you around. And like, it's so easy to have your brain be elsewhere, but it's so rewarding to be where you are and nowhere else. Right. And, like hearing you describe that, where it's like, this is a thing that forces you into flow state, reliably 100% of the time. Right. Which is like pretty rare if you think about it in that way. Like, there's just not a lot that can do that to a person.
Yeah, I feel like, there's something to be said for like a distraction-free environment. And kind of I feel like, I don't know. I was thinking about this the other day. I have like an app I'll use on my phone to turn off and silence all notifications while I'm working. And, I was really thinking about it, and I was like, why is that just while I'm working? Like, why is it that when I'm outside of the office, when I'm doing, regular everyday life things, why do I have notifications on then? Like, why am I trying to be distracted there? And I feel like there are so few environments that people have for themselves where they're distraction free.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of a cool piece of Legends that I don't know that I've really considered, but I think it's probably more important than ever now.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of awesome. So, for you coaching, how long have you been coaching?
I think it's been about 6 months now, 5 or 6 months.
I think we're pretty close. I think you talked to me about sparring. It was like right about at the same time, where it was like sparring and coaching were kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you feel after coaching your first class?
I think they're in it. I felt so dumb, dude. I like the combos I made up just didn't flow. And like, I think that there's a lot of that where, I'm just very like self-analytical and self-critical. And I was like, dude, if I was taking my class, I would want my money back, after that first one. And I was kind of rough on myself, but I really appreciated you actually took me in and we did a Legends lap, just kind of walk and talk. And you walked me through and you're like, hey, that was a great class. These are some things you did really well. And these are some things you can work on. And again, you gave me like those small, discrete little chunks that I could work on, right? And I tried to improve at those things, and I did improve at those things. And I ended up, like I feel much more confident now. And after my classes, I'm usually feeling like great. Like it's almost like a little natural high when I'm done with the class, because I'm like, that was fun. And like I actually really enjoyed and appreciated it. And I still every once in a while, like I'll throw out a combo and then I'll like get on the bag and just kind of shadow box it. I'm like, oh man, that combo actually kind of sucks, and I wouldn't recommend doing that one again. But that's like only 60 seconds. Then I pick a better combo for the next 60 seconds, and it's fun. But
yeah, well, I think member coaching, I remember like, because I'm a very introverted person, just in regular everyday life. I don't really like being loud or being the center of attention or anything like that. And I remember, because I started as a member coach, but I remember the head coach at the time coming up and talking to me after, like, I had just done like an intro. Like, I think I was just like, hey guys, like, throw your gloves on. We're going to get started on the bags. And it was like 100 and down or whatever our warm up was. And I just remember I just remember the head coach at the time being like, hey, and that was literally all I said. She was like, hey, you're doing great. Be a little louder. And that was it. And I was like, okay, cool. I can be a little bit louder. And I remember being so excited and nervous to coach when I first started. And like, I think it very quickly does become the highlight of your day when you are like coaching a class. I feel like, back in the day, I was going through some basic college courses at the time, and I was like, okay, this is great. And I just remember really looking forward to like coming in and coaching an evening class. And I was very excited to do that. And I thought that it was awesome. What do you think, for you as a coach, where do you think that you make the most impact?
Yeah. So I hope that I make the most impact by genuinely noticing the good things that someone is doing. And there's nothing more fun for me than like watching someone, and it can be like any level, like, for anyone who knows Maddie, the dude's a killer. And
Yeah.
it's fun for me though, to like know the exact thing that he's working on and be like, dude, that thing you told me you're working on, you nailed it. And like, I hope that that's impactful to him, that like somebody knows what he's working on and they noticed it and they commented. Right. And then, or it could be like down to maybe like a newer member who doesn't, they're not Maddie, but like knowing that, hey, this is a thing you did really well. Like the way that you rotated your hip into that too, that's going to hurt. Like, good job. You nailed it. Right. So like, I always try, I think the most impactful thing I can do as a coach is be aware of the members, be aware of what they're working on, and then let them know when they do it right.
That's awesome. I feel like as a coach, there are so many things to focus on. So what makes that piece stand out to you as like the number one thing that you're focused on in your coaching?
I think maybe it's kind of like the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And for me, that's what was really impactful for me, as I have like this little teeny thing, like, hey, this time I'm just working on my 2, just trying to get that right. And then Coach Brigg comes over, he's like, bro, solid 2, right? And for me, that's that's actually the exact thing. That's the reason I came the next morning, right? So that I could get that endorphin hit again. And so maybe that's not the most impactful thing. Now that I'm talking about it, maybe that's not the most impactful thing to whatever member, but for me, that was the most impactful thing.
And I think we do that as coaches where, the thing that we find the most important to us is the exact same thing we try and like put on other members. And I think like there's something so special about, we have a member named Celeste. I don't know if you know Celeste.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She's awesome.
So good.
Yeah, she's so great. Yeah. I remember the first time that she was like coming in and I remember it was one of her first classes. I think her first class was with Tiff. But then after that, it was probably, a week later, she was in my class. I got to see a good baseline. And then I don't coach a lot of those 8:30 a.m.s that she was typically coming to at the time. And I remember seeing her a couple weeks down the road and being like, oh my gosh, like, look at your 1s and 2s. Like, the way that you're hitting the bag, it's like, that would hurt, like you said, right? And then you see them in their guard and you see them like smile. Just a little bit. It's just a little smile.
Yep.
But you see them like break this grin, and then you're like, oh, this is amazing. You're like, yeah, you notice the change that, I don't know. You see the change, and then they like that they were recognized for their hard work.
For sure. Because they know they're working hard, right?
Yeah.
And they just want other, I don't know. Like, maybe that's a dumb thing to say, but it's like there's obviously intrinsic motivation, like, and all that, but it feels really good when somebody else notices it too. Especially, I think we all carry around this a little bit of imposter syndrome where it's like, you're worried that you look dumb, or you're worried that the combo that you make up as a coach is stupid. So, but you know what I mean? And I think we all carry that. And so when you look at a member and you can see something they genuinely did well and you can compliment that, I think it kind of like dispels that imposter syndrome a little bit just for a moment, and makes people feel good and feel seen and like feel like they're progressing, which is really what people want.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, you know, I kind of refer to it as like everyone needs like a coach in their corner, right? Like it's good to be intrinsically motivated, but I feel like it's also so good to have a coach who believes in you, right? And I know for me when I started, like that was one of the most important things a coach could do. Like I just needed somebody there who could believe that I could get from point A to point B. And I think that, yeah, I think that's one of the more impactful things at least in my own boxing journey.
For sure.
So if you had to sum up your time at Legends, your biggest takeaways in 3 words, what would those be?
It's hard. I'm having like all these little 3-word like clever slogans, but
Slogan? I think a slogan would work.
Little slogan. I don't know. I'm like, keep going, it gets better. Or like, no, that's not right. Like keep going. That's 5 words. But like keep going, it's really fun.
And that's probably a good message to a lot of people is like, just keep going. It's fun. Or even keep going, it gets better. I like that one too. Because I think that kind of defines like, you know, one thing that stood out to me, at least while we're having this conversation, is that moment where you're like, why couldn't I be that, you know? And I think that's a good way to sum up what a good coach can do. I think a good coach can probably be somebody who makes you flip that script and starts, you know, thinking like, yeah, I could do that. Like somebody believes in me. I have the things that I need. Why can't I be that individual that I think I could be 6 months down the road?
Yep.
That's awesome. Jamison, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
This is fun.
Good stuff.